Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and my law firm assists physicians with employment contract issues. Today, I'm going to talk about for physician recruitment agreement forgivable loans, just kind of how they work and why they're in place. So, for the most part, these are used for people just coming out of training. So, how a recruitment agreement works between a hospital is the physician would have an employment agreement with a private practice within an area. And then the hospital or hospital network within that area would supplement the first year compensation of the physician as long as the physician stays within the area for a period of time. And so I know it might be a little complicated, so let's break it down. So the employment agreement with the employer is going to dictate the employment relationship between the two parties. There are some practices that maybe couldn't afford at the very beginning to completely compensate a physician. And so the hospital may have a need for that specialty in the area, but they don't want to employ that physician themselves. So what they'll do is they'll tell the practice, all right, if you bring in this physician in this specialty, we will cover their first year expenses in addition to some bonuses. And so in the recruitment agreement, it may state, all right, we're going to give you the physician a signing bonus. We're going to help with relocation assistance. And then we're going to cover a certain amount of their compensation for the entire first year. And so let's just say you've got a primary care physician and they're making $200,000 a year. Then the hospital would essentially say, all right, we're going to supplement $200,000 for that first year. And then they'll offset that by whatever the physician actually, brings in. They'll also cover the practice's expenses as well. And then at the end of that year period, there's going to be an outstanding amount of money. And then that amount is going to be kind of thought of as like a forgivable loan. And so as long as the physician stays within that geographic area of the hospital, and there should be zip codes attached to the recruitment agreement that just says, as long as the physician stays within these zip codes, we will continue to forgive the loan. And so there'll usually be a 1-year income guarantee period, and then there'll be some kind of forgiveness period after the fact. Usually it's 3 to 4 years. And so how they normally would do it is they'll take that amount. And so let's just say in this scenario, the total amount with signing bonuses, relocation assistance, base salary, practice expenses is $300,000. Then they would say, all right, and it's a 3-year forgiveness period. They'll say, all right, for every month that you're here, 1/36 of that $300,000 is forgiven, as long as you stay in the area practicing for 3 years. At the end of the 3 years, that amount is completely forgiven. You do not owe us anything. And then you're free to kind of move on and do what you want. Now, why would a physician sign a recruitment agreement? Well, I would avoid it if possible, but there are some jobs where it is the only way that job would exist is if they were supplemented in some way by the hospital network. And so you need to say, all right, is the practice just doing this to not have to pay me? And I'm not going to, tell the practice that they're doing something dumb. They're not. They're being smart about the business. Why wouldn't they accept why wouldn't they accept some kind of supplement? Why would they say, no, we'll just pay everything when they could have a hospital cover many of the fees? The downside to the physician is a number of things. One, they are going to ultimately and very likely be responsible for whatever that is outstanding amount is at the end of the initial income guarantee period. And so let's just have a scenario where they have a non-compete in their contract with the employer, but in the recruitment agreement, it states they have to stay within a certain geographic region in order to, forgive the outstanding amount. They could be completely limited in their options if they have a really bad non-compete in the employment agreement. Now, ideally, the hospital would require that the employer remove any kind of non-compete language. And I would suggest making certain that happens. And you need to press the hospital network to press the employer to remove that language. If you just go to the employer and say, I'd like that removed, they may say, no, we're not doing that. If the hospital insists that the employer remove that type of language, and you need to tell the hospital, this is why this needs to happen, it will be much more likely that it will be removed. Because if the practice has a need for a physician, but they don't want to pay the entire amount of compensation and bonuses and all that good stuff at the beginning, it likely will be worth it for them to just remove the non-compete in order to get supplemented with all of those things that I just talked about. So that's kind of one thing you absolutely need to think about if you have physician recruitment forgivable loan, is that you kind of get the non-compete removed from the contract. Because if you're in if you're in a rural environment and there just aren't that many opportunities in your specialty, and you did have a non-compete, and maybe there's no opportunities for you, and it would be impossible for you to work out that 3-year forgiveness period. I mean, you're stuck with a significant amount of money. There is interest on that amount as well, and they'll likely want you to pay it back immediately and fully as soon as you are no longer in practicing within that region. So that's something a physician has to be very careful about. And then another one is, every job looks great at the beginning, right? Everyone's nice, the huge growth opportunity, but when you get there, it may not be as nice. It's just, there may be problems that there's just no way of knowing about in the interview process. And so there are times where a physician may come into a job and then immediately they think, oh man, this is not going to work for me. If you're under a recruitment agreement, it could cause big problems for you. One, getting out of that job, or two, having to pay back significant amounts of money. So I would be very careful about signing a recruitment agreement with a hospital network without really thinking about, is this, the absolute place that I want to be? And then, do I have any other opportunities elsewhere that won't require me to sign the physician recruitment agreement? It's kind of a tough, thought process. I find this is like, when I'm going over a contract with someone just out of training, they don't have, excuse me, they generally don't have any knowledge about these things. When you add in a physician recruitment agreement on top of an employment agreement, it's like information overload for a physician. And sometimes it's difficult to convey the dangers of signing something like that. It's probably infrequent, meaning there aren't, the percentage of contracts that I review that contain a recruitment agreement or have a recruitment agreement attached to it, it's probably less than 10%. Now, I'm not saying this is an absolute terrible opportunity. As I said before, some jobs may simply not exist if they aren't supplemented by the hospital for the first year. And they can turn into tremendous opportunities. But you always have to look at, all right, what's the worst case scenario in this situation? The worst case scenario is someone signs a contract, starts a job, hates it, gets out of it, and owes $200,000, which I can tell you, if you're just out of training, you're not going to have, at least not immediately. So that's kind of a breakdown of physician recruitment forgivable loan. I would suggest talking to somebody, meaning an attorney, about each document before you sign anything. Honestly, be careful if you're going to do both of these, and find somebody that has expertise in doing this, just to get a set of eyes on it and kind of walk you through the dangers of it. If you have any questions about an employment contract or a physician recruitment agreement, we're happy to take a look at it. You can call my law firm at the phone number listed below in the description, or you can reach us through our website, ChelleLaw.com. And I appreciate you watching the video. Thanks.